All right, episode 26 here at Jenny's Rules. I have Kyle Bean from Unlocked Real Estate
Yes.
from KW.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited
I am excited too.
this new endeavor you've got going on to at least get an idea of what's happening.
Yeah. So obviously we rebranded, formerly the Bean Team. Obviously Justin, my wife, and myself created the Bean Team years ago.
How many years ago was that?
I know right when I got into real estate, and that was in January of 2019.
Oh, man.
And so it kind of formed then and moving forward. And then, the team's just grown a lot. And we started looking at it, and it's always been in the back of our mind, like, should we not? Like pros, cons, like weighing that out.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we've been around for a while. Jess has been around in the business for quite some time.
Seasoned, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely seasoned. And we're like, hey, is people going to know who we are or think about us? Or do we lose that following or that clientele? They're like, oh, where are the beans? But we're just in a really good spot. We got a really good team now. And so we actually went to a class. My business coach, Levi Gurno, up at Ladder Real Estate in Coeur d'Alene, was throwing this class on about mission. We really went there to work on our personal mission and what do we want to get out of everything? Like personally life, like what's your why? Kind of that kind of thing. Yeah. And so we're sitting there and we're brainstorming and I'm working on my mission. I'm like, man, what do I want like out of life? Like, what do I want to achieve? And so I write out this mission and it's like helping you discover the doors you can open. And so we're sitting there and we're talking as a team kind of thing. And I'm like, I really think this is like a mission for the business. And so we brainstormed and talked about how it can mean so much different things. And we're like, let's rebrand. Let's do this. And so Unlock obviously came to mind and went through that and just like, hey, this is super powerful and super great and giving the agents on our team ownership. So it's not like, oh, I work for Kyle and Jess or I work for the Bean Team. It's like, hey, I'm Nick, say Nick Pace, right? Hey, I'm Nick from Unlock Real Estate. And so he can have a lot of ownership around that. It's not about us anymore. It's about we and it's a team and everything. So it's just super powerful and so much meaning behind it. And it means a little bit different to each agent on our team, which is so powerful.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it unfolded.
That's so cool, though, that it just kind of unfolded in a way that, I mean, organically, it wasn't something you guys, it was during your own personal journey finding it.
Yeah.
And let's kind of, backtrack a little with you. 2019, when you started, and what made you decide to get into the business?
Yeah. So Jess had always been like, hey, you should do this. You should do this. I'm just like, man, I don't know. I worked out at Clearwater Paper. I was out there for like 12 years.
Oh, wow.
So, good career, good benefits, all the things. And when you're self-employed, you don't have those.
Correct.
And it was finally, we had our third boy, Hudson, around August. And I was like, I'm going to take some family medical, like hang out with him. Like we were a good spot financially. I'm like, I'm just going to take time off and hang out because something I didn't do with any of the kids. And so she stayed home. Jess stayed home too for a while. And she kind of went back to work. And I was just like, I'm just going to hang out for a couple months. And it was that time that I was like, I'm missing out on so much, like with working nights and late kids sports, like over the years. And I'm like, maybe I should do this. And so I was like, let's do it. And so now looking back, I was on family medical and I went to Coeur d'Alene, did my 2-week stretch of classes, got licensed.
Time?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. That was.
Yeah. Just kind of took over the household, right? And I was up there, stayed up there every night. Went through the classes, got it done, passed my test, turned around, did the whole Washington thing and got licensed and then put in my notice and said, hey, I'm diving into this.
This is it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now looking back to now, what if you hadn't have done that decision? Those what ifs.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about them, but
for sure,
how easy it was to.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell you where it would be. It might be in the same spot, maybe a totally different spot.
Mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's super excited. Would we create what we did today if I didn't? That's the big question.
The jump.
Would we have impacted so many lives and all that thing? It's like, man. Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about too.
Right.
Yeah.
And being from, I don't know, what department were you in the
I started out in the paper machines. Worked there for quite a while, jumped into safety for a little bit, and then ended up in the
Okay.
maintenance side of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like customer service or just like, working with people and talking with
Yeah.
people, is that something that you have naturally?
I don't know, naturally. I think, real estate was maybe an easier switch for me than most because I'd been around it for so long. Listen to Jess and all the things over the years.
Background.
Yeah, help him put up signs, like all that stuff, right? Like I'd been a part of it for so long.
Yeah.
And that's where I was just like, man, like even the testing, this stuff, like it came really easy to me. Just because of that. Because I've heard this before. I've
Mhm.
heard Jess talk through the scenario on the phone with a client and all this stuff. So I knew that kind of back end stuff.
Sure.
It was just kind of easy transition for me.
Easy transition. Yeah.
But again, then hard at the same time.
I was gonna say
Whole new career.
whole
right?
new career.
Yeah.
But just, people and like a line of work. Like me, I used to work at a coffee shop back, in high school and stuff, and I could talk to people.
Yep.
And how to, sales and whatnot. But it's a skill in itself,
Oh, absolutely.
just to try to learn, even though you're in the business. But
Yeah.
you might not have that like drive to go talk to
Strangers.
strangers. I could talk to a rock.
And then tell them to sell their most biggest asset they own or whatever, or buy a house and spend all
Yeah.
this money. Like, yeah, it's a big
It's
deal.
hard. I know when they come to me and they're like, "Hey, I want to buy this house," and I'm like, "I need to know everything about you."
Yeah, right.
You think it's too much? I know.
You see way more than we do.
Oh man, there's stuff where if I was to try to buy a house now with how financially things are right now,
Oh, yeah.
so difficult.
I know. It's like the stuff like we refinance and stuff like we built our house. We've been there like 7-8 years now. And it's like we go to refinance. You're like, you need what?
Yeah.
Blood samples? Like
Pretty
DNA? Like, what do you need?
my son's 401k that we're
Yeah.
planning. Yeah, here you go. Here it is. It's just crazy.
Yeah, they want to know everything.
They do. Well, 2008 doesn't help.
It's their fault.
They ruined it. They ruined it for everyone. It's just that extreme level of knowledge that we have to make sure that you aren't gonna fail.
Yeah.
Like we don't want that.
And it's all for good, right?
It is.
It's all the protection. We don't want to go through
No.
2008, 9, all that over again.
Not at all. And the way that the market is right now, and the whole new rebrand, like is there some hurdles or, how are you kind of working around that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always hurdles, no matter what market, whatever. I mean, there's always a challenge. I think that's the thing. You got to be open to those and be willing to face them head on. I think that's the biggest thing. Like you hear, the phrase like be the buffalo, like face the storm, like charge after it. Like that's what you need to do in this business because it's always changing no matter what. Interest rates, market regulations change with this whole NAR lawsuit and all these things. Like it's change, but sometimes change is good.
I like change.
And you just got to be on top of your game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Keeping up to date. You seem like the one that would be kind of all up in the news and just statistics and that kind of data.
Yeah, I love looking at numbers and seeing where the market's been, where it's going kind of thing. Also trying to stay up to date with what's going on because you got to be proactive in this business. But like with the lawsuit stuff going on, I think it's one of those things like there's a lot of facts out there, but there's also a lot of like untrue stuff out there.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like trying to debug all that and it's not even like finalized yet and like went through the courts and people are just like freaking out.
Yeah.
It's pretty much set in stone, but they don't have all the answers. And so that's where I haven't really spoke about it too much. This is probably the most I spoke about it.
Oh, nice.
Just because, I want all the facts. I don't want to put out misinformation.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of confusion out there. They don't know what it means. And it's just presenting to buyers and sellers like what it means and how to protect them and how to negotiate and all those things coming forward because it's going to change.
Yeah.
But
just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And if anything else is on top of it.
End of the day, show your value.
Yeah.
Be super informed, super knowledgeable about your craft and show your value.
Sure. Trying to teach maybe, I don't want to say it in this like popped in my brain, that old dog, new tricks kind of thing.
Yeah.
Repeat clients, a good portion of probably your guys' history have been, people
sure.
that you've worked with more than once. And I always get my dad said that this because this is what he did and all that. What are some steps that you take to educate in the now compared, from the history that we've had? And then they come to you and they're like, but this happened this way.
Yeah. I think it's just being, willing to share that information and face those questions really head on. But also like thinking about the answers. Like that's something that we do day to day. Like we script and role play. Like we handle those objections because there's gonna be them. You're gonna hear different ones and maybe you haven't heard, but the majority of them are pretty much the same, especially with this lawsuit and changes coming down. Like, oh, I don't have to offer a commission. Well,
Mm-hmm.
technically, yeah, it's always been that way. But is it in your best interest? Like, how do we get the most people in that door in that house?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're not offering anything, and like we all know that home affordability is so high
Yes.
and so hard right now for a lot of people. House of prices, interest rates, all those things play in down payments. Like when we're talking like 5 years ago, in house for 200,000, a down payment wasn't as big as it is now. And so really just like, hey, is that in the best interest? Are we going to get every buyer in the store that we can? And so it's just really showing that. And I think over the years, like things change, right? And so, it's even like when I see home inspections and like the home inspector be like, well, we're applying new code to code from a house that was built in the 70s. Like it's not the same. Like that stuff constantly changes. And so, just getting them back up to like what the current market is.
I don't want to burst any bubbles,
Yeah.
But that's where we're at.
Yeah. It's like egress windows in the basement. It's like the number one thing.
Yeah.
Like back in the 60s and 70s and all that.
Oh,
they didn't need it.
The plumbing, what was the plumbing? That plastic.
Oh yeah, there's like that crappy plastic.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. They don't even use it anymore. Like Federal Pacific panels. Like, it's like things that come up all the time.
Well, just here for this building, since they're gonna turn it into an event center, I always hear what they're saying, but the door handles, they had to be specific, but they change. Maybe they'll go back to the old door handles in another 5 years. So, yeah. I don't know. It's just moving with the flow of how things are current, but at least to adjust to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
First-time home buyers, that's just something that I've really have encountered on my side of the career of how to embark their journey with you guys. What is something that you guys bring different to the table?
Man, first-time home buyers, it's great, right? They don't know a lot. And so it's really just showing, like, walking them through the process, like explaining the money they need up front. Because, there's a lot of programs out there where they don't need a down payment.
Oh, yeah.
But they still have to bring money to the table. And, like, really explaining that and walking through the challenges. And there's always going to be those hiccups or problems that we face in the transaction. Like, we never have one. I don't say never, but most of the time there's some kind of hiccup during that process. And so like being prepared and explaining them and just walking them through like start to finish, like what this process actually is. And it's really just informing them so they're knowledge. So they have the knowledge to make the wise decision. Obviously they have us to give them advice and how to walk through these, but it's overwhelming. There's a lot of things that happen.
Always something, I swear, in transactions where, I'm still encountering, things that are new. And so is my manager who's been in the business for years. And maybe you end up with the same result on certain ones, but the way that you get there could be totally different. Yeah. Are you one of those that likes to know when the fire has, started, or do you like to know once the fire's been put out?
That's a good question. Like with financing and stuff, like
just in the communication of just like maybe with like the lender or just, with anybody else in the other industries.
I think me personally, like just where I'm at, and being busier and all those things and stuff, it's like, hey, if there is a fire, tell me about it.
Okay.
But you better give me some solutions about it too.
There we go.
Because if you just say like, hey, this is, going on, and it's like from the lender standpoint, like, is it my problem to solve or is it your problem to solve?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you need some ideas or how do we get through this or if you need to do something different, I'm going to help you get there. Like we're working as a team here. So, let's get to the finish line. But if you just like, here's the problem. And it's like, I can't help you.
I'm just here for you to vent to.
I'm an agent. You're the lender.
Exactly. There's times where, and I'm learning this too on my end of working with the relationships with realtors. Ones that do want to know all the fires, that ones that are like, nope, don't tell me until after it's done. I don't want to know. I don't want to have to, so I'm learning that flexibility with that. Is your team, like what's the flow of the team?
Yeah, obviously, if they have some fires, they're gonna come to me and be like, "Hey, like this is the fire that needs to be put out," and really getting them to build the confidence and like, "Hey, you probably have the answer to this. You don't need me."
Mm.
So we've been there. We're always like we bounce stuff. I bounce stuff off of my team. Even being in the business and Jess and like, "Hey, like how would you handle this?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
because there is so many scenarios and like maybe I haven't seen it before,
Yeah.
but maybe they're like, "Oh, I just did this." And so it's like that's what's great about it. That we're always collaborating because like as a solo agent kind of alone. You're solo.
Yeah,
You're
you're
solo.
solo. Which is, the team thing. I think people get kind of, like, what does the team involve when it's, you are individual,
Hmm.
but do different team people do different roles, or ones that are listing agents, ones that are
Yeah,
buying agents?
we kind of messed around with this a little bit when we first started out. Like when it was just kind of me and Jess. She was just listings, and she had like an assistant to help her with that. And then I was just mostly focused on buyers, which I love buyers. It's just like my wheelhouse. I love it.
You would prefer that?
I mean, I would prefer that, but I mean, I work with a lot of sellers too, right? And
Sure.
so I think there's, with the buy side, it's always usually something happy, right? It's like, hey, they're just got married and they're having their first kid and they want a house,
Hmm.
or they're upgrading to a newer house because they have a couple kids now.
There's no contingent.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so, or it's just like, hey, elderly couple and they're looking for single level and they always wanted one because they've been in their house for 30 years. And it's like, there's so many memories and stuff they had in this house because they raised all their kids in it and stuff. But like getting to them to a single level to let them, they're forever home, like at that point. Right.
Mhm.
And so I think that's super awesome. I think selling, like, there's a lot of good things, right? If they're upgrading or, changing jobs and their finances are in line, they can get a bigger house, like, great. But there's also those ones that are, sometimes a divorce or someone passed away. And like, those are just super hard in our financial situations. And it's like, those ones aren't always fun. Like, ultimately, we're getting to the goal they need. But in the moment, it's like, oh man, I feel bad for these people.
Yes.
So,
You're human.
yeah.
You can't, it's hard to hide those feelings and those
Yeah, for sure.
emotions. I feel that.
Yeah.
Um, like you said, you guys did in the team. Did you guys used to have the buyers agent?
Yeah, we separated buyers and sellers and stuff like that. And as we grew and kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't, I think that's the thing that we've done really, really well is that, we'll try stuff. And if it doesn't work, we learn from it and move forward and like, hey, this is the best scenario. So now all the agents on the team buy and sell both sides. They do it that and just let them kind of run the business how they want to, in a sense. But ultimately, we come together and we have standards and guidelines and how we operate as a team.
You have team goals and
Yep.
and all that to strive for, and then individual goals, I'm sure, on top
Yeah,
of that.
that's what's super awesome about the team is when we set goals. Justin and I don't set the business goals until our team sets their personal goals because I'll never tell one of my agents on my team like, hey, you need to go sell 40 houses this year to reach my business goals. It's like, hey, what's important to you? Like, what do you want to achieve this year? Business and personally, and like what that looks like. Like we have Amelia fresh on the team, new agent, super awesome. She's going to go super far in this business. And it's like, hey, what's your personal goals? Like, how do we help you get there? And then like business and all that. And so she sets her goals. And then when they get all their goals, we have like a unit or transactions that we want to do this year. And then we say like, hey, what do we want as the team? Like, what growth do we want to see? So we want growth year after year after year. And so we sat down and be like, hey, this is how many units we want to do this year. And so how do we make up that gap?
Yeah.
Like this year we were shooting for 200 transactions in a hard market.
In a hard market.
And so we're trying to figure out like, hey, how much of a gap and where does it mean to be? Like if we need to make up 20, 30 transactions, then hey, it looks like we got to grow some more.
Sure. With, Unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, so different to other teams that maybe have been formed?
Man, I think Unlock is so much. It's not just about business in sense of like selling real estate. Obviously, a lot of that is, what we are. We unlock a lot of doors. It's giving that, client that home ownership that they always dreamed of or maybe never had. And so I think that's a lot of it. But it's also diving into their personal goals and unlocking their potential and maybe something else, a different endeavor or a sweet story. Erica Keene on her team, RTC. She's amazing. She's the glue of the team for sure. And she, grew up in a family that always rented. They never had home ownership. And so, like, one of her goals was like, I want to buy an investment property. And she owns her house now. She's owned multiple houses and stuff. So, like, that's huge. But it's like, hey, like, you want to unlock your future and like your generational wealth in all that. And so it was a year goal. So like end of 2024, she wants to achieve this. And so we sat down with her. We went through things, seeing like, hey, you can use a HELOC and all those different options because interest rates are down payment and all that. And she actually just closed on it like 2-3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And so to knock out a year goal in the first quarter,
that is
like,
so strong.
So just celebrate her and the achievement with it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I've seen the team grow, from the years. Just sold my husband and I's house, back in the day. And just to see how much you guys have grown and the team aspect.
Yeah.
And with you and Jess, like, are your roles in the team as well, like as in terms of being the buyer's agent, seller's agent? Or?
Yeah. They're constantly evolving. Jess is doing a lot of investing, and she talked a lot about that when she was on your podcast.
Yeah.
And so she's still a CEO. We're both kind of CEOs, and we obviously own the team and stuff like that. I've stepped into more of a leadership role in coaching the clients, or not coaching the clients, coaching the agents.
Got it.
Like a day-to-day and a weekly basis to get the most out of themselves. And so I love that. I love that side of it. And so I'm still selling and helping clients.
Sure.
I'm still in production. But ultimately, like, hopefully someday, like, I can just kind of step out and be more of just a leader, team leader, coach.
Yeah. I can see that. I feel
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. It's great.
How could you talk in front of 300 plus people?
Ooh, I don't know. It's one of those things like, it's something you have to work to, right? Yeah. It's like the biggest fear in like everybody's lives, like public speaking. And so really looking at that and practicing it. Obviously I do it with my team and been at bigger things and spoke up and talked like I was just at a class yesterday up in Spokane, and like being able to speak and feel comfortable doing it. I think it's just a lot of confidence building and have some knowledge behind what you want to say and what, your reason of why you want to say it. And so getting really clear on that and what you want to do in your life. I think it's really the mission, right? When you have that big why, I think it's super important and it makes it a lot easier.
Well, even the emotion of how you present it, shows a lot.
Yeah. And that's what's so powerful about a mission. Like ultimately, like once we got this rolled out, like I'm so passionate about it now. And it really helps you like answer yes and no to a lot of decisions. Like, is this sticking true to my mission? Am I helping someone unlock a door?
Yeah.
No matter what it is if it's not a house, great. Like if it's something else, absolutely. And
what if people come to you and they don't know? Like, I mean, I can just say there's a lot that I'm just doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This is how this came about.
Yeah, let's sit down and talk.
Let's just talk. And now it's here.
Yeah. And it's really figuring that out because a lot of people don't have that answer.
Yeah.
Just in that class really yesterday I was talking about, they're like, who do you want to become? I'm like, whoo, that's deep.
Kyle Bean, but...
Yeah. And it's just asking the right questions. I think that's the thing, like the most powerful thing you could ever do is just ask a powerful question. And so, we put that a lot into our business and our clients and, getting them like, hey, like, what do you want to achieve out of this? Like, what's your biggest problem or whatever? And it's just asking that powerful question at the right time can really just change someone's life really quick.
Powerful. I feel it because it just me personally, and I'm pretty open about this with other people I've talked to on the podcast where it's, I'm just kind of going with the flow. What I'm, thinking is okay, but is it right?
Yeah.
I don't know. No one really knows.
Yeah.
But how you perceive it and how you encounter the things that come along, makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And it's like taking that first step. And it's funny you say that because like you're just going with the flow, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because like we do this thing is like, we say like our name and then like we do hard things. And I shared a story on social a while back. And so my middle son, Liam's in baseball, and he had a kid on his team that was just jumping out of the batter's box when he's up to bat. It happens. I can see it all the time, right? And so I talked to the coach. He's a friend of mine. And I was like, hey, can I just talk to this kid for just a few minutes? I just want to talk about his mindset. And he's like, yeah, dude, go for it. And so I was like, okay. So I pulled this kid, and the kid's like, who's this guy? I'm like, hey, Caleb, just come talk to me. And I was like, hey, I know right now, like sometimes we have to do really hard things. And right now, the hardest thing for you is just to stay in that batter's box. And he's like, yeah, I know. If I stay in that batter's box, I could get maybe hit and get on base. I'm like, absolutely, right? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, you can just get up there and stay in the batter's box. Like your mind's really, really powerful. And I want you to get up there, and before you get in that batter's box and say, my name is Caleb and I do hard things. And he's like, okay. And like trying to get away from me because like he doesn't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, hey, what's your name? He's like, my name's Caleb and I do hard things. And so next time he's up, he gets up there and I can see him mouthing the words. And I'm
Oh.
like, heck yeah. And he stands in there, first pitch, comes right at him and smokes him. He's like, he gets the first and he's like all jacked up. And the coach came and talked to me before he got to bat. He's like, what'd you say? I'm like, hey, it's just a thing we do with our kids. Like, my name is whatever and I do hard things. And he's like, oh, okay. And so Chuck, the coach, he got to first and he's like, what's your name? He's like, my name's Caleb and I do hard things. And I'm like, that's the power of the mind. And it's really like, if you get in the right mindset, you can achieve anything, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that's the thing. I was like, the next pitch, it was a pass ball and he went to steal and he got out a second. He didn't slide. And he was like super upset. I'm like, hey, Caleb, hey, like we made progress. We took that first step and you'll never steal second if you don't ever get to first. And I was like, hey, it's just something we have to do. We have to work on, right? You took that first step and that's progress. And that's all we count about. So like when you say, hey, I'm just winging it, but you're taking that first step.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel pretty confident now. That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about like doing this outside of just real estate?
I think it's probably a long-term goal,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit. I think, there's a lot of stuff we want to do in real estate and not necessarily in real estate with a lot of people in our sphere. Our team, one of them, like getting them to where they need to go and where they want to be. I think it's super important. And that's like the power of the team. Like once they get on the team, man, like we're all in on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do tons of things with agents, like, and it's not just real estate. A lot of it's just personal stuff like finances and stuff like that. And so we do one-off coachings with them at no cost and kind of thing. And so, long term, who knows?
I can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, just you talking in an area you coached before, so you
Yep.
kind of have that mentor type
Yeah.
already embedded in you. You've been a player
Yeah.
and seen, maybe your mentors, in the past.
Yeah. And like being that person that didn't have the answers or be these things, but like really showing up and like spending money on yourself, I think is the biggest thing. Like going to these classes and diving in and business coaching and all those things, like invest in yourself. Because ultimately that's where it's going to get you where you want to go is if you, invest in yourself. And so that's where it's really became a huge part of our lives. It's so funny because like Jess, when she was in real estate and I wasn't, I was like, you're doing what? You're not spending money on that. Now I'm like the total opposite. Like,
You're
hey.
like, let's get the checkbook.
Yeah. But like I've learned so much, right? And like
Mhm.
getting in the right rooms around the right people. And like that's the biggest thing. And you develop really quick with it once you dive into it.
That's so cool. I mean, I'm just feeling pretty motivated now. And like you said, in everybody's aspects, personal, that really is something that you've brought into the team, right? Before, like, I guess with how the growth was, before, I don't know, I'm trying to find the question that was like, what was the before of the team?
Yeah, I think before the team was a lot just about selling houses. And we didn't have the focus where it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing. Once we decided like where we wanted to go with this and what it could be, I think that's where it really turned the page. And it's like, this is what we want. And in like at the end of the day, you build those relationships and pour into people, like it's going to come back 10 times. And so like stop worrying about finances and like, how do I change people's lives? Like it'll come back.
Sure. And, just the stuff that I follow with like loan stuff, I'm in loan groups and loan videos, and they're always like, well, you got to cold call and, do all that. With our area being so unique in its just kind of own little world, and it's not big enough to go cold call. Everybody kind of knows someone in some area.
For sure.
With how, you go to Spokane and you go to Coeur d'Alene and you hear about their endeavors and their stuff, the difference from here to there, like how do you maintain it to our current area?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is like when you get up in those markets and big cities and stuff like that, they're honestly all the time on dialers, and the dialer's just like pulling. It's like a white page. It's like just phone book and calling and calling and calling and calling and calling, and the production is just in the numbers. How many people call, you get someone to answer, right? And so we don't do that in a sense. We obviously have our website and stuff like that, generates leads. pay-per-click leads and Facebook, social media, all that stuff. And so in a sense, it's kind of like cold calling because we don't really know a lot about them. We might just have a phone number or a name,
Sure.
or maybe they inquired about a property that we have some kind of starting ground. But we have standards for our team. And I think that's a big part of like the production and what we can do is that we expect you to lead gen. Like that's a standard and like you need to do that. And that's what really moves the needle for them. It's like when you focus on something is what you're gonna get your production from. If you never call anybody and you wait for that phone to ring, like in today's market and just the way the industry has changed in the last couple of years, like it's gonna be a hard go.
Yeah.
So
I know.
you got to get on the phone.
I know. I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah.
It's just though the difference from when I started, which was just a couple years ago,
Yeah.
to even you, just that years of in between of how the market has changed so much. Trying to think of where I was going with that one. It lost me. What am I? Okay. In between.
Like what has changed in the market?
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Or what you see maybe in the future coming up.
Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a deep one.
I wish I knew. I'd probably be retired by now.
I have secrets.
No, I think the industry has changed just so much. And like, you hear like, Lewiston's is so far behind. Like we're like 10 years behind than any of the big markets and what they're doing in those markets. But I think really like even before we moved to KW, like you would see just broker signs. You just see like a Century 21 sign. You would see, all these that's like a blanket broker sign. It wasn't like any agent ownership with it or anything. Nowadays, you see like everybody's faces on them. You see their own cell phone numbers on them and all that. And it really changed the industry. I think, what we've seen, especially when we moved to KW, and like that was the best part of KW is like you run your business how you want to run them. I think at the end of the day, the client works with a person, not with a brokerage. And so it doesn't necessarily matter where you hang your hat. And so I think a lot of that's changed because like before, like they'd just call the office.
Yeah.
Right. And like whoever was on floor time, whatever, and transfer to the available agent. And now all those kind of leads are coming to you and kind of getting the reward from your hard work from getting that listing. And so I think that's where the industry has changed a ton. And like where it's going is a really good question. Yeah.
That is the question.
That is the question.
How do you read? Can you read into the future? I never talk politics, or anything in this, but with the election, everyone's like, oh, there's going to be a change, and all this, whatever. And I'm trying to keep it this. I don't want to tell you anything that I feel because even though I have thoughts and I have feelings on things, but I'm not going to portray them on my clients or anybody to give them this thought that this is how I feel it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You should feel the same way. No,
absolutely.
Never. Do you get that with some of your clients and some of the people that you work with?
Yeah, obviously, just a lot through like the pandemic and stuff. Like certain people went out of certain states for certain reasons, and obviously we're pretty open to all the things in Idaho. I mean, it's just everything, right? Like we're pretty laid back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought that would align with their lifestyle, and so. With the upcoming, like we could see that very well. I think no matter which way it goes. But I think we're in a great community. I think that's the end of the day. It's a great community. It's safe. It's friendly and all the things. I think that's the bigger story about what Lewiston has and Clarkson.
And in the small
LC Valley.
Yeah, little strip.
We're all the same.
We're all the same. Did you feel like that's when house prices jumped? Was from people moving into our area?
I wouldn't say it's just from people moving in our area. Yeah, it had an impact on it. But I think interest rates just got so cheap. And home affordability became so easy, and people were selling houses and having, $100,000, $200,000 equity so they could go spend money. And it just became such a huge seller's market. And that's what ultimately controls the prices any day is the market. We don't set the prices. We don't be like, oh, this house is worth this just because it's the market's paying that. And so at the end of the day, it still has to praise and all that good stuff. But, that's what, I think really affected the home prices.
Mm-hmm. And well, now like that was the evened out, like high house prices, lower interest rate. And now it's like, they're both high.
They're both high. And I think it's just inventory, supply and demand at that point, right? Supply is still so low.
I swear there's every day there's new listings and new stuff, but the numbers are so down.
Yeah. Like we look at the numbers all the time, and like days on market and months of inventory is a big one. So like a neutral market is around like 5 to 6 months. And that's like if we don't list any more houses, how long will it take before we run out of houses to sell? And it's still like in the low twos.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
That's like almost pandemic numbers. Like we were
Yeah.
down below 2 a few times, but it was right around there. Like it just hasn't changed, and that's why the prices hasn't changed.
Wow. What's going to have to happen for it to budge?
Ooh.
We're getting dark and
Yeah,
deep.
you
I
know?
know this is
No, it's good. Like what? One, you got to get more supply. End of the day, you got the more supply.
Mhm.
And then when there's so much competition as a seller out there and buyers having some more choices, there's gonna be a lot more negotiations, and it's gonna drive those prices down. Will it drive them down super far? Probably not. Just the cost of new construction and everything, we can just high. And so supply is probably the biggest thing, not so much interest rates, because higher interest rates is going to drive prices down and give you more supply, but like we're still not seeing it.
Yeah.
If interest rates were in 12, probably supply would go really high.
Oh my gosh. If you think about like our parents, what they bought back in the day, that's perfect to the price that they bought now and what it's worth.
Yeah.
It's hard.
crazy.
I know. I can't even fathom.
No. But also like wages, like, right? And like when our parents are, they're like,
Yes.
$5 an hour.
Oh yeah. And income and just the area medium income that I calculate, with some of the loans that we have that have to meet certain parameters, are just to be able to survive. My gosh, we are getting so deep in discussion. It's just the numbers all across the country. It's just I'm dumbfounded.
I know.
And how people are doing things. But like you guys are saying, like, what is your goals to invest and do the things that
Yeah. I think that's the thing when we look at like, hey, investing, how smart it is. And like, I wish I would have done it sooner. It's one of those things like everybody says, I wish I would have bought my house years ago and years ago and years ago. I think we got to start somewhere. And so we still plan on buying houses. Jess has got a couple flips going on right now. We own some single families. We own the commercial building we're in and stuff like that. And so it's something for that wealth throughout life and like retirement plans and stuff like that. But it's also a sense like I think our kids, like we think now, right? How hard it is for people to buy. And you think, 10 years, 20 years down the road when our kids are like that age to buy, how hard it's going to be. And so it's really not saying they're going to get a house when they get old. Like that's not happening.
Right.
They can work for it to buy it or do whatever, but like just to give them a head start.
You're going to give them some education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do a ton of that, especially with
Good.
Maddox, our oldest one. Like just like, hey, read this investing book. You read like
He's a math guy.
he is a
Yeah,
smart
that's
kid.
good.
Yeah. And so, we give him incentives. We like, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars if you read these books. And they're all like self-development entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad was about investing and all the things. And so getting them a head start is like where they're going to need. And like just looking at today, like how many people are entrepreneurs other than just going and get a normal hourly job. It's across the board. I mean, like you're an entrepreneur.
Listen, I definitely am. I definitely am. And the area that I don't know, it's kind of like camping. We had a camper. I've camped in a camper, but I've also camped in a tent.
Yeah.
I will never now go back to tent camping because I know how it feels to be in a camper. And now it's like I have this flexibility of my hours, my days.
Yeah.
I, though, feel so much more. I work so much more now, but I have that flexibility. And I don't know if I could ever go back to that.
For sure. You control your own destiny. And I think that's what's super important. It's like, but you also have to have those like standards and stuff like, hey, I got to show up every day because there's someone that's going to yell at me if I don't.
Oh, that's me. If I have nothing to do, I'm not leaving the house. I'm not putting on shoes. Just that I have to fill my time with stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just.
The accountability, it's super hard, right?
Yeah.
When you're an entrepreneur or self-employed or anything, like the accountability is like there's no one holding you accountable. So you better be accountable yourself.
Preach it.
Yeah. Let's go.
When it, comes to maybe someone that's like looking to buy or looking to sell, like what are, some ways that they can get some information on the answers or questions that they have?
Man, I think just give us a call. I mean, truthfully, just give us a call. Like all of our agents will sit down, even if you're not ready or you're a year out or you just curious, like our agents will dive into you. They'll
Mm-hmm.
give you all the knowledge. And I think that's what's super awesome to see with them. They love sharing. They love providing knowledge and education to people because it is hard. Like we even talked about like hosting classes at schools and like
Oh yeah.
doing that. Like Nick's really passionate about that and like our youth. This is one of the things you always hear, like, they don't talk about money, they don't talk about home ownership, they don't talk about any of that stuff in schools.
Mm-mm.
And I think it's one of the things that, like, maybe we're missing the piece on. And so, as parents and leaders and stuff like that, like, that's something that we have to show up and do.
Yeah. I just think, the preparing for just savings or how to, function.
Yeah. How credit cards work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you know how many people don't know how they work?
And it's so crazy because it's so important because if you don't have credit,
Oh gosh.
you don't have anything. You can't go buy a
Nothing.
house.
No.
It's like some kids like, I've saved all my money and stuff. And like, oh, I'm going to go buy a house. Like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. There's ones where I've, in that, I don't know if it's like educational and too, like how to, like if you are in it, there are people that try to come forward that are like, oh, I need some credit,
Yeah.
help and all this. And just to give them guidelines on like what will build your credit fast.
Yeah.
What are things that you have on your credit? I always say too, there's opportunities to go look at your report for free
Yeah.
and audit it because there could be something in there that is like not maybe you, maybe it was an identity theft thing, or I've seen a junior senior name
Yeah.
got mixed up. It's just like those little tiny things.
I know. It's so much. I think I've already heard people like getting credit cards for their kids
Mm.
just to start building that credit.
Wow.
Just like small purchases, pay them off.
Yeah.
Because you're setting your kid up for success there.
Yeah.
When they go get a good job and stuff and they want to buy a house, they're like, at least you
Absolutely.
have something started.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I am just excited to see how the team, the goals that you guys have to grow it. KW, is this something that KW, has kind of brought to like the team aspect?
Yeah, I think that was a big influence on the decisions and getting with the right people. And a lot of those came from KW and just this sphere of people that are inside of KW and knowledge and the team base and all that has been so helpful along our journey. And the coaches we've had over the years, Reed Moore out of Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, he's got a group up in Alaska too. Levi Gurno, a KW guy, Reed's a KW guy. All the things, it kind of gave us the blueprint of how to do this. And then it was a lot of like putting stuff in action and learning from your mistakes. I think we've failed forward a lot and like, hey, that didn't work or that sucked. But it's like taking that information and like going like what didn't work, what did work.
Right.
And like kind of redesigning that and like, hey, now it's working. Now it's working really good. Not saying we won't fail coming forward and like in future endeavors and with the team and stuff like that. But if we do, we're going to step up and come back better.
I love that. Well, I feel like time flies when I talk on this. I never really know the sense of how long we've been talking, but I just, let's end on that because that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on here.
Thank you.
Chatting your ear off.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Good.